Hi everyone, I'm Julia with the Berkeley Judicial Institute, back with another installment of Judges in the Community. Today, we're joined by Judge Pepper, here to share how she encourages connection among the members of the court staff and her insights in the judicial world. Good morning, Judge Pepper. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. I can't wait to dive into your journey and insights, but just to start out, would you mind briefly sharing a little bit more about who you are, where you sit, and your personal judicial history?
I will. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Julia. My name is Pam Pepper, and I am a United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Wisconsin, which has two seats, one in Milwaukee and one in Green Bay, and I sit in the Milwaukee seat. I'm also Chief Judge here. In terms of sort of how I got here, I started my career clerking for a federal judge on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And then I was a federal prosecutor for a number of years, and then a federal criminal defense attorney. And then I started my judicial career on the bankruptcy court. I was a federal bankruptcy judge for 9.5 years, and then got appointed to the district court in 2014, and I've been here ever since.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your introduction. It is such an honor to speak with you. And now diving right into the core of our conversation today, what story are you here to share with us and where did it all begin?
So the story that I'm here to share is some of the ways that I've tried to, as a judge, make connections with the staff of the court, not so much other judges, because we interact with each other, but with people in the clerk's office and the IT department, and the folks that maybe we don't see every single solitary day. And where it started was when I joined the bankruptcy court, because I was not a bankruptcy practitioner when I got appointed to the bankruptcy court. I have been doing criminal law. The only thing I knew about bankruptcy was that people who didn't have any money file for bankruptcy, and I soon learned that that wasn't even true, that sometimes people who have money file for bankruptcy. And I didn't know really any of the people in the clerk's office because I hadn't used that court. I hadn't been a client of that court. And so I wanted to start trying to make some sort of connection. And one of the first things that I started doing, and I've continued the tradition to now, is that I got a list from the HR department of everyone's birthday. And then I went to Target and Costco and places like that, and I picked out a bunch of what hopefully are funny and non-offensive birthday cards, and I just buy them in bulk. I buy big stacks of them whenever I'm in a place like that. And then at the beginning of every month, I go through the birthday list and I write out a card to each person in the clerk's office. It used to be just the bankruptcy court. Now I do it for bankruptcy and district. So I have a master birthday list, and I go through that list, and I take everybody for February, and I pick a card. I personally select a card for each person, and then I write a note on it. And then I ask everybody in my chambers to sign it, even though they may not know those people either. And then on the day of the birthday, we hand deliver the card to the person, or if they're in a foreign, if they're up in Green Bay, we mail it to them. And it's really gratifying. I've had people tell me actually that it's the only birthday card they got that day was the card that our chambers sent to them. I've had other people say, "Oh, you must have your staff go out and buy the birthday cards, or you must have your staff write them out, or whatever." I don't do that. I do it myself as a way to try to forge those connections. And so it's small. It's not, I'm not giving anybody bonuses or raises or whatever, but in the judicial world, we often can't do that. We don't have money or control over money to be able to do that kind of thing. And so it's just a way to let people know that I know they're there, and I appreciate them, and I appreciate what they do.
No, that's amazing. And I wanted to know, like, when you reflect on, how these connections with the court members themselves. Are there any stories or moments in particular that you want to highlight or that stand out to the impact it has like within your office and within the community that makes you want to continue doing this and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, I occasionally get feedback from people that, they're shocked. New employees frequently will say, well, how did the judge even know I'm here? And how did the person even, how did she even know my birthday? And so then people start to talk to each other and say, oh, we all get one. She sends one every year. I've had, people respond and say that they save the cards. And I've had people respond and say, I was having kind of a low day and this was a nice pick me up. This was funny. Sometimes people will respond and tell me, oh, I had a really great day. My family, we went out for dinner, and they'll tell me sort of what they did for their birthday. And it's just a really, it helps me feel more in connection because it's very easy. I'm sure other people can sympathize with this, unless you work in a court with four people, which some people do. But I don't see everybody every day. In fact, I don't see a lot of people for weeks on end. They're in the clerk's office. I'm here, doing what I do. And so it's really lovely, when I do see them, to be able to have a joke or a story about their birthday or something that we've been able to do through that connection. The other thing, sort of a similar vein, that I started during the pandemic when we were all apart and could not be physically together. I was looking for some kind of way to make us feel connected, even though we weren't physically in the same place. And so I started at the very beginning of the pandemic sending out funny videos that I found. If anybody remembers those videos where people would come up with songs that you could sing that lasted 20 seconds so you'd know how long to wash your hands, to get your hands clean, or jokes about people wearing their face masks down here. So I would pull up memes and jokes and send them out to the whole court family every day during the pandemic. And as it stretched on, I kind of ran out of funny mask and sanitizer things. And so I started sending out historical snippets or pop culture snippets or paintings or bits of songs or whatever. And I did that every day for several years. And finally, just mid last year, I decided maybe I'll just save that for special occasions. And so now I'm doing it, for example, during Black History Month. I'm sending out some fun posts. But again, people would respond and say, oh, today's post was on Pompeii. I went there on vacation. I'll share my photos. And then I could turn around and share those photos with everybody else in the court. And so it gave us all a kind of a way to interact with each other as a community.
That's amazing. And I know you talked about kind of how this interaction or this community building really echoes into your work that you do. But I was wondering, like, with these interactions and collaborations with like various individuals in your community, I wanted to hear like your personal impact in your involvement as like a judge, but also as an individual. Because I know some judges say like, being a judge, there's like a title to your name, which makes you a little distant from the community and things. And so I wanted to know your insights on that, as a judge.
Sure. So, just from a purely practical standpoint, if everybody feels a little bit more like a team, that helps everybody get their work done better. So there's that. But from a personal standpoint, you're absolutely right. There's a certain isolation to being a judge. Everybody looks at you and says, oh, I can't talk about this, or I can't behave in this way because you're the judge and I'm not the judge, or there's just it's a reality of the job. And I think for me, something as simple as wishing somebody happy birthday and telling them that I know about their birthday and having somebody respond back and say, oh, thanks. I had, chocolate's my favorite and I had chocolate cake. It makes it feel less like me and them or them and me. and it makes it feel a little bit more like just two people, interacting in the way that normal people interact with each other. I think there'll probably always be that divide a little bit between judges and the people who work in the clerk's office or IT or whatever. And that's kind of unfortunate in a way, but I hope, I think that these kind of small personal interactions help to kind of reduce that distance a little bit and have people feel more like they're all part of a federal family, even if they occupy different positions.
Yeah, and just like as a follow-up, I wanted to ask like, what does community engagement or like being in a community mean to you, especially being in like the judicial world for a really long time? I think you have a very unique perspective of what that means. And so, yeah, I would love to hear more about that.
One of my colleagues, I just used the term a few minutes ago, um, court family or federal family. And I got that from one of my colleagues who's been on the bench even much longer than I have. And, I think there is a real sense of that. And just like any family, we don't always agree with each other about everything. And there are bumps in the road. But, this is a group of folks who all are joined together by a sense that they're serving the community, in our case, the people of the Eastern District of Wisconsin. Those are our constituents. And so whether we're in the IT department, making sure that the computers work so that we can docket things, or we're a court, clerk and we're trying to make sure that the cases get called on time, or we're a docketing clerk and we're making sure that what somebody files actually ends up in the record, or a judge, all of us are serving that same constituency, and it's our job to be available for them so that they have access to the justice system and to try to move the cases through and give them the decisions that they need. And I, I'm assuming that there are probably private industries where people feel a shared sense of mission, but I think here, you got a lot of folks who have worked in our clerk's office for a very long time because they love what they do and because they think it's important to serve the people of the Eastern District. And you got judges who feel the same way. And so to me, that, being part of that federal family and part of that mission, I get a lot of satisfaction and a lot of personal fulfillment from being a part of that group.
Yeah, amazing. And I hear a lot of judges also, trying to make that a federal family, come in contact with, the public community, ha sometimes have its barriers and barriers to entry are definitely something that's evident. But did you have any insight on like how, how your community on your bench or with your team kind of um, close that gap or that lower those barriers with the public community.
We try lots of different ways, and there are more ways that we could try. One of my colleagues is incredible and does a huge amount of our public outreach. We have programs for middle school and high school students to come and intern over the summer, to be able to sort of see what jobs there are in the legal world, and they might spend a little bit of time with the probation office and a little bit of time with the U.S. attorney and a little bit of time with the defense attorney and a little bit of time with the judges and the clerk's office to get an idea of all the different ways that they could participate in the legal system if that was something that they were interested in, and to make what the judicial system does more real for them. We've actually had some of those students who graduated that program and gone on to law school after college, and are becoming lawyers, which is hugely exciting. We've also started to use naturalization ceremonies to spread a little bit of the mission of what our courts do. We have twice now had naturalization ceremonies at the halftime of the Milwaukee Bucks professional basketball team at the halftime of their games. And my colleague did one and I did the other. And I have to say, I was so taken aback. I thought for sure halftime would come and everybody would get up and leave to go get their beer and their hot dogs, and it would just be me and the people who are being sworn in as new citizens. And it wasn't. It was a packed stadium. People stayed. They applauded for the new citizens. They cheered. It was so wonderful. And it was so wonderful to see these new citizens, be able to look around this huge stadium and be welcomed by their fellow citizens. So that's been a way we've been trying really hard to do public outreach. The judges here are involved in bar associations in the community. Um, and, even I figure every time I step out onto the bench and every time I interact with somebody who comes to court, I have an opportunity to let them know what the system is about and the fact that it is here for them and to listen to them. So even if I'm doing a sentencing and I'm about to send someone to prison and away from their families, I have an opportunity to make them feel heard and to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing and to try to encourage them that on the other side of this, there are going to be opportunities for them to change their lives. And so um, I think, that outreach to the larger community is a big part of our mission, and we need to do even more of it.
Yeah, and I love hearing like the various ways that you guys are doing public outreach from like, to having internships for students. As a student myself, like those opportunities are really, really key to opening you up like new perspectives and knowing like what you can do in the future. That's not an opportunity you can always get. And so I'm sure the students in your area are very, very grateful. And also the naturalization ceremony. That's so awesome. Like, that's a place where like even people who aren't as aware of like the judicial system, like they get to see that live and see even a little portion of what you guys do in the judiciary. And so I think that's so awesome and really fun. And so that's definitely a way to lower barriers and really become educated in the services and the federal system that's in the communities. That's so awesome. And then for my last question, I wanted to ask for those who are interested in doing or starting the kind of work that you take part in, within your federal community and then also in your public outreach. I would love to know what it takes for you to prepare that or take action and any expert tricks for those who are aspiring to get involved in such work.
No expert tricks, but small things like sending out a group email about an interesting factoid or recognizing the fact that a colleague had a baby or that somebody in the clerk's office had won an award. Those are things that anybody can do if you've got your fingers on the keyboard of your laptop, so or your phone. So that is, I would really encourage people to, it doesn't have to be some big, huge project. The naturalization ceremonies with the Bucks, that involves, connecting with the Bucks PR team and making arrangements and security, and that's a bigger production. But, getting a list of people's birthdays and sending a birthday card, or when you find out that a colleague's husband won a teaching award at his school, just sending out an email saying, "Hey, Jane's husband won a teaching award, and isn't this cool?" Anybody can do that. So I would really encourage people if they want to get involved in something to start small and start with what you can do yourself. And then you can step up to bigger, more organized programs by getting together with like-minded people and throwing out ideas and starting to figure out how you can implement a bigger program. But the little steps are just as important as the big ones.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing. And I really enjoyed hearing about your story and your experiences. I'm sure many of those who are tuning in into this interview are as inspired as I am. And with that, as a member of the Berkeley Judicial Institute, I want to thank you, Judge Pepper, again so much for the amazing insights on your activism and your insights within the judicial world. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you to BJI for inviting me.